And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Mckay people. Nation to Nation creates a platform for Indigenous leaders to share their perspective on economic developments and major projects occurring within their traditional territories. On today's Open Connection, representatives from Fort Mckay share how economic independence transformed their community.
Just a little note, when I heard a comment here about relationships, I guess when it gets to my level, whether it's dealing with industry and, government's hard, but industry and our other First Nations, it's all about relationships when it comes to my level. You know, we got our bean counters and we got our lawyers and all those guys are gonna make the right deal for us. But one of the things that we value most when it comes to our council level is the relationship. If there's no relationship and there's no trust, there's no agreement. And that's how we do things in Fort Mckay, because that's what we value. And the whole premise of our corporation is built on values of trust and relationship. And you'll see that as we move along. You know, we talked about UNDRIP a little bit and a lot of these different things. Well, you know, my view on those things, well, there would be no UNDRIP or no other laws if the federal government implemented treaties since day one, right? That's why you have all these things. So, you know, today, as we speak today, across Canada, there's a Treaty 1 to 11 meeting with all the chiefs across Canada talking about implementing treaty. So here we are, 2023. Treaties were signed 130 years ago, and now we're still talking about implementation.
What we'll be talking about today is Fort Mckay's business and investing approach. Fort Mckay's goal is to become a fully self-sustaining, have a fully self-sustaining economy. And we know that that is a fundamental question that many First Nations are grappling with today, is how to build a fully self-sustaining economic base. So we hope that by sharing our investment and our business approach, that there may be some lessons that you can take away, or great ideas that you can take away, and we're certainly looking forward to hearing the rest of the presentations today and learning from all of the other nations that are here. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, Fort Mckay First Nation is located in Treaty 8 territory. It's about 45 minutes north of Fort McMurray. We're a small nation. There's about 900 members, half live on reserve and half live off of our reserve. Our Moose Lake, which we call it, but it's the Nemea River reserve lands, that's the traditional homelands of Fort Mckay. That's where my Cookum and my Mushums were born. That's where we trapped and where our families lived. And it was because of the children needing to go to school that we moved down into where Fort Mckay is currently located now. These little pink outlines here are our reserve lands for Fort Mckay, and then everything surrounding those little pink boxes is our traditional territory.
Yeah. Just a note here, if anybody knows northeastern Alberta, we're right dead center of the Canada's biggest oil sand deposit, and that got developed in the 70s and 80s. And prior to that, our economic base was trapping, and we're still living out in the woods. A little bit of logging back then, but our economic base was trapping, and with the oil sands, our economics had to change. There was at that time, fur prices were going down. I think the European fur ban was in place back then. You're talking like 90s or when I was a bit younger, and so the economy's changed, and oil was developed in northeastern Alberta. So we as a community had to take advantage of the economic change and conditions, and we took hold of it. Just a little thing about Moose Lake, and I don't know if you've ever had a chance to follow Alberta's rules, but our nation, we're the only nation in Alberta that were able to push the Alberta government and giving us a protected zone and around our lakes, and we were able to just get that victory there 2 years ago.
Fort Mckay's goal is to become fully economically self-sustaining. We all know that the payments that we receive as First Nations governments from other levels of government and the grant programs that are out there, they're great, they're helpful, but it's not enough to provide the level of programs and services that Fort Mckay wishes to provide to its community. Yep. And so currently, Fort Mckay generates 90% of its annual budget through its business activities, and only 10% comes from federal or provincial sources. And as we continue to, invest and grow our business activities, we're hoping that will become 100%.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. Established in 1820 by the Hudson Bay Company as a trading post, Fort Mckay was named after Alberta's first resident doctor, Dr. William Morrison Mckay. Archaeological evidence in the form of pre-contact pottery indicates Indigenous presence in the 1500s. Let us return to the conversation with Chief Mckay.
That number of 10% actually goes up and down a little bit. We were at about 5% before, and we're talking about sovereignty and different things about that, and we can sit here and talk for hours and even a little bit. I'm only got 20 minutes left. If the government were closed today, we'd have no problem. We would still deliver the service to our members. We'd have to adjust the 5%, maybe Monica's travel budget, but but other than that, we would if the government closed today, that would not impact our First Nation, and that's exactly where we want to be today. And we're going to fill that gap of 10% as we progress into bigger economic equity deals and so on. But we're quite happy to be in this position right now.
Our investment in business activities pay for it. Pays for the annual budget of the nation, for the community services that Fort Mckay needs to provide, employee salaries and house benefits, housing. We've recently built 9 houses in the community, health and mental wellness programs, community infrastructure. We have policies where we're reinvesting funds back into our businesses. And then, of course, wealth redistribution in the form of quarterly member payments. And so I'm going to let Chief Mel talk about the school, but this picture of our new school, which just opened this year in September, is exactly why Fort Mckay wants to become fully economically self-sustaining, is that we're able to provide beautiful programs and services and infrastructure, which really creates opportunities for our community, and the school is just a perfect example of that.
We were able to deliver those programs, and the majority of those programs, actually all the programs, are topped off. So we were to look at what we receive from the government, and it's a very small, minor amount. I think with our post-secondary education, there's 213 students out there, and right now I think if we were to rely on the government funding, we would be able to do 5 or 7 students. So just with that, everything's being topped off, and we don't look at, it's a government responsibility. Yes, there's a government responsibility, but we're going to get them. We're going to get them in a different way, and we'll hold them to what they're entitled or responsible to at the government and court. So with schooling, we talked a little bit about reconciliation, and we can talk about another couple of days about that, and it's really, really sad. But what we see in the community is a lot of the development of our culture and our people has to start at the school. We got to start and go back to our basics and back to our roots. So our school here is we had a school in the community that was run by Northland School Division. And everybody knows the horrors of the education that was a bit weaker. And so we decided to build our own school. $35 million school, government put in $14 million. The rest was raised by our companies and so on. But the thing about the school that's very unique is it's we're going to do the outcomes, because teachers always tell me, you might say outcomes. But the other side is it's 40% land-based. Meaning that the balance of the curriculum is based on language, trapping, hunting, food prep, and so on, dressmaking and sewing. So we're very fortunate that that we're able to develop and design the school to address those. So that way, our kids now, when they're coming out, they're going to learn 2 languages. Dene and Cree. And they're going to be able to, do the move to town or carry their education on at the university or school, but still be able to go and earn their keep out in the woods.
A couple more really cool things about the school is it's fully owned and operated by Fort Mckay, and we were able to, through our hiring and very intensive recruitment process, hire 75% of the teachers are Indigenous. And so each class will have a teacher and an EA working with them, which we're really excited about.
And of the 75%, there's 49 staff we had to hire for the school, and actually 22 of them are from our own community. So that's another good number.
So here's the Fort Mckay business structure. On the right here, you're going to see the Fort Mckay group of companies. That's the owned and operated business entity of Fort Mckay. It's been around for a long time. The Fort Mckay group of companies, they got their start back in 1986. So like Chief Mel mentioned before, Fort Mckay's always been there, but at that time, the oil sands were moving in. The government and the oil sands didn't think that they needed to talk to Fort Mckay or think about at that time that Fort Mckay should have business opportunities from this industrial development. So at that time, our late chief, Dorothy McDonald, she went out and she was an incredible advocate for the community. And that's how she founded the Fort Mckay group of companies, was with one single contract at Syncrude, and they had 5 band members who were janitors. So it got its start in 1986 as a single janitorial contract. It's grown significantly since then. It has 6 subsidiaries, it has its own separate board of directors, it has a separate exec team, and it's 100% owned by the nation.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. Fort Mckay is among Canada's leading First Nations when it comes to working collaboratively with industry. The nation has a successful and long-established record of relationship building with various oil sands mining companies that operate within their traditional territory. Let us return to the conversation to see how Fort Mckay continues to invest in its future.
Things like some of the work we do, and it's all over our websites. Please go and check that stuff out. We medium and heavy civil, so we're in 785, 793 heavy iron. We're the only nation that owns our own fleet. A lot of work. We're doing transportation from Edmonton to Fort McMurray. A lot of heavy equipment operators, embedded operators. We're actively searching for people across Canada, so you got lots of employees. Call us, look for us. We're looking for employees all over the place. Just with the group of companies, the workforce is around 1,700 to 2,000 employees. And remember, our nation is 891 members, so basically we have a job for every one of our members, and that's not even counting the number of positions we have on the landing site.
So our other business entity is called Fort Mckay Landing LP. It's the wholly owned investment corp for the nation. It was founded in, I believe, 2015. It's 100% owned by Fort Mckay. It has its own board of directors. The directors are chief, the CEO of the nation, and our chief investment officer. Sitting underneath Fort Mckay Landing is the business team where I work. And we, at this time, have 11 subsidiaries. So we have invested in different interests, so from 13% up to 51% into these 11 companies that sit underneath Landing. And each of them have their own separate board of directors and obviously have independent decision making. And so the revenue that is generated from both Fort Mckay Landing and the group of companies all flows back up into the nation of Fort Mckay.
Everything about the group of companies side and even the landing side, if the group of companies don't perform, we're not on site. So when we're out there, we strive on the 4 basic items that I feel are important for construction. That's safety, quality, cost, and schedule. You get that driven to you over and over. When you get out of these relationship meetings and you get to the job sites, that's when you start talking about safety, quality, cost, and schedule. So, those 4 principles are embedded into all of the companies. Because, we'll create the opportunities for you, but we're not going to be able to ones that keep you on site. Now they got to perform. She talked about the business development team underneath the landings. And that's a very important key for our growth of our community and our business structure. You know, we have Dr. Stu, he's in charge of the department. Patrick, Monica's title is Vice President of Investments. So we have a team of 6 or 7? 5. Okay, 5 and a couple part-timers. So, you know, when you look at 5 employees and you look at what they're doing. So when you look at from a governance side, you see 5 people, you start adding what that costs in your mind in terms of salary dollars, right? Bing, bing, bing. So what we do is, you know, we'll talk a little bit, but we give these guys investment, but the big thing there is it's return on investment. You know, they've got to earn their keep, right? They got to earn their keep. Otherwise, you know, we can put that $1.5 million somewhere else. But
he tells us this all the time. He always reminds us.
And I hold them to it. But no, it's the whole thing is in order for your nation to grow, you've got to have investment. And we feel for our nation, it's investment of people and the department in order to get us growing.
So in 2019, Fort Mckay Landing, with the blessing of Chief and Council, developed a investment policy and an investment criteria. So under the investment policy, of all of the funds that Fort Mckay Landing generates each year, 25% of that comes back into Fort Mckay Landing for us to deploy into new investments. So we always have a fund and a pot of money that we're able to use as we're looking for new investments each year. And oftentimes, you know, we might spend all of the money, so then we go back to the board and back to Chief and Council and ask if there's additional funds that they can release on a case-by-case basis, which sometimes happens. Under our investment criteria, we were very clear about the types of investments that we are looking for. So we are a yield investor. We are looking to buy the free cash flow from, you know, well-managed, stable companies. We don't operate any of our investment companies. We call them portfolio companies. We only get involved at the board level, and we provide value in terms of business advisory and development services. So we're looking for low-risk companies that have high margins. We like the size of about, 20 million EBITDA, and then returns in that 10 to 14% range. They need to be privately held. We're looking all across Canada, and in the next slide we'll talk about our diversification strategy as it relates to our investments. We can use different structures in our investments. So we've done a couple convertible debentures, which is kind of, if you're not familiar, it's like dating before you get married. So we issue a loan, we can make interest payments off of that loan, which satisfies that requirement that we're bringing income back into the nation. And then at the end of that loan term, we have the option to convert into a minority equity position. We've done straight up equity purchases. We've done some senior and subordinated debt, so just different ways that we've financed these investments. And that's what we look for. Fort Mckay has constant deal flow, so every week we probably get, 10 deals that are coming our way, just from our networks and opportunities that we're looking at. And having this investment criteria and our policy makes it very easy to evaluate these deals. So we're able to very quickly look at it and say, oh no, this is venture capital, or this is a turnaround company. This isn't going to fit what Fort Mckay is looking for. And so we're able to say no, and we're able to focus on the opportunities that are going to help us reach our goals, which is consistent revenue coming back into the community.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Over the past several decades, Fort Mckay First Nation has worked with industry partners to ensure their members access benefits created by industrial development, while at the same time mitigating the impact of oil sands development. In this final segment of Open Connection, we discover how youth benefit in Fort Mckay.
You know, we can't be sitting in the meeting every day because there's so much of it. There's so much of it. And one thing we say is Fort Mckay is open for business, and I'll close with that if there's an opportunities here, you know, we can talk. But we had to develop some parameters for them, because otherwise we've been in meetings all day. So we set these things saying you gotta have, you know, returns here and there, because when we see the returns, we see immediate short-term returns because we have to pay for our operations, but we also see long-term returns where these big 3-year projects, we're not going to get a return for 8 years. So we had to set those up and say, here's your parameters, and here's your pot of money, and run with it and make it work. That sometimes on that due diligence framework or that portion, you're talking the due diligence process on a $500 million job. It could cost you $1 million, and that's the risk of business, whether you're going to, and that might even turn into nothing. So it's really important how you structure that. And the slide up there, it shows 25% on the previous slide. So of all the income earned from the landings and the group of companies, if there's 100% income, 50% of that income goes to run the nation, the operation and maintenance of our nation. 25% goes back into business. Right? That's how we see it. So, she spent her 25% plus like 3 times more than that. But what we're also happy about is the 25% that's outstanding, the balance owing goes to every community member on terms of a business profit dividend. And we're very happy that we're able to share the wealth that's created at the level with our nation members. And I know it's kind of numbers. Right now, the numbers for each member around a little under $10,000 per member. And the kids, no, we're not taking members, Crystal. No. We're not taking members, sorry, no transfers. And for the youth, as soon as they're born, their funds are put in trust. And when they're 18, they go to a finance course, they get half, and then the other half is when they're 21. So we're really looking for our youth. I guess might as well say one more thing while we're talking about that, because we always like thinking about our future. There's another pot of money that's held with our other investments, and there's a lot of interest earned. So what we're doing also on that is we're creating a retirement and wealth fund for every member of our nation. So the minute our members are born, there'll be a retirement fund established for them. Right? So, and that's all. And those are all from the interest earned from various investments, not even touching our principal. Right.
So now I'm going to talk about Fort Mckay Landing's diversification strategy. So in 2019, we realized that we needed to diversify outside of oil and outside of the Wood Buffalo region. So anybody who's been paying attention to oil prices, they go like this, and it's a revenue roller coaster. So for a long time, Fort Mckay, our business interests were only in our region and only focused on oil, which surrounds us, which makes sense. And I think, a lot of First Nations are in that same situation. But when oil was up, things were good. We were able to pay for the costs to run the nation. When oil was down, we weren't able to do that. And so we realized we needed to diversify outside of the region and outside of oil and have that mix of focusing in our territory in oil, which we're very good at and which we know, but also looking across Canada for other investments and in other industries. So we focus right now on trades, industrial services, manufacturing, and real estate. And we do that because these are things that we know and that we're good at. We have the expertise in these industries.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.